You are strapped into a vibrating C-47 as midnight gives way to chaos. The red light glows above the jump door. Somewhere below you is Normandy, but you cannot see it. Only clouds, flak bursts, and tracer fire slicing upward like angry fingers. The aircraft lurches. Men vomit into their helmets. The smell of oil and fear mixes in the fuselage. For years, the rule has been absolute. Airborne operations only work when precision holds. Drops must be tight. Units must land together. Objectives must be seized within minutes, not hours. Every major military staff in Europe believes this without exception. Miss the drop zones, scatter the units, lose the timetable, and the entire operation collapses. German commanders believe this rule as deeply as the Allies do. They trust that confusion is fatal. They trust that darkness and weather will protect them. They trust that if the parachutists scatter, they can be hunted down one pocket at a time. Allied planners know the risk. They have war-gamed it endlessly. They accept casualties, but they cannot accept chaos. The airborne troops are supposed to land clean, secure bridges, destroy artillery, and hold the flanks before the first landing craft hit the beaches. That is the plan. That is the rule. Then the weather turns. Low clouds drop to less than 900 feet. Winds exceed 20 miles per hour. Radar beacons fail. Pathfinders miss their marks. Anti-aircraft fire pushes pilots off course. Formation discipline breaks. Green lights flash early. Red lights never come on at all. Men jump anyway. Paratroopers from the 82nd and 101st Airborne plunge into darkness miles from their intended drop zones. Some land in flooded fields and drown under the weight of their gear. Others crash into trees and hang helpless, silhouettes against the sky. Radios shatter. Maps soak through. Units vanish. At Allied headquarters, reports come in fragmented and contradictory. Drop zones missed. Objectives unconfirmed. Casualties unknown. The clock keeps ticking toward dawn. By every rule the Allies believe in, this invasion should already be failing. But in 1944, one night, and a handful of men scattered across Normandy change everything. You are Lieutenant Richard Winters, 26 years old, from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. A former office manager who learned to lead men not from theory, but from relentless training and earned trust. You wear the insignia of Easy Company, 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment, 101st Airborne Division. You are not supposed to be here, not here alone, not here with no idea where the rest of your company is. When you hit the ground just after 100 hours on June 6, 1944, the landing is brutal but survivable. You cut yourself free from your chute. The night is alive with gunfire and shouting in German. You count your equipment by touch. Rifle, ammunition, no radio, no company. Within minutes, you gather what you can, 5 men at first, then 7, then 12. None of you landed where you were supposed to. Some are from Easy Company, some are not. Ranks barely matter now. This is not how airborne operations work. This is how they fail. The strategic stakes are enormous. Above you, thousands of aircraft still cross the channel. Behind you, the invasion fleet waits on the horizon. Ahead of you, German artillery overlooks Utah Beach. If those guns remain operational at first light, landing craft will burn and men will die by the hundreds before they ever reach shore. Your mission, if you can still call it that, is to disrupt German defenses long enough for the seaborne landings to survive. No coordination, no reinforcement, no certainty that anyone else succeeded where you failed. You know the clock, H hour is 6:30. That gives you less than 5 hours to find the enemy, identify targets, and act. The rain-soaked hedgerows close in around you. Every shadow could be a German patrol. Every sound could be the last warning you get. You move anyway, because if you do nothing, the rule proves true, and the invasion dies before it begins. You move through the Norman countryside in short bursts, stopping every 50 yards to listen. The night smells of wet earth and cordite. Distant explosions roll like thunder from the coast. Somewhere to the west, St. Mir Église burns. At approximately 400 hours, you reach a sunken lane overlooking a hedgerow-lined field. From here, you see it. The objective no one told you was still yours to take. A German artillery battery. 4 105 howitzers, dug in, camouflaged, perfectly positioned to fire on Utah Beach. If they open up at dawn, they will rake the landing zones with high explosive. You have 12 men, no heavy weapons, limited ammunition, no radio to call for support. By doctrine, this is impossible. You crawl forward, counting distances. 200 yards, 150. You hear German voices now. Laughter, boots on metal, the clink of shell casings. You divide your men not by regulation, by instinct. One squad suppresses, one maneuvers, one assaults. At 4:30, you give the signal. Rifles crack, grenades explode. You sprint forward as dirt and shrapnel tear into the air. A German gun crew scatters. One man goes down, another runs. You leap into the gun pit, fire point blank, and keep moving. The first howitzer falls silent. The second fights back. Machine gun fire rips overhead. Men scream. You crawl, throw a grenade, and feel the concussion slam into your chest. Another gun down. Time stretches and compresses all at once. You no longer hear the broader battle, only your breathing, the snap of bullets, the shouted orders you barely recognize as your own. By 500 hours, 3 guns are destroyed. The 4th remains operational. A German counterattack begins to form in the trees. You are outnumbered, nearly out of explosives. Dawn is less than 90 minutes away. This is the moment where failure becomes certain, and this is where everything hinges. You do not have time to debate doctrine. You do not have time to wait for orders that will never come. You have one gun left firing toward a beach you cannot see, and you know exactly what that means for the men who will hit the sand in less than an hour. You crawl back to your remaining soldiers, 10 now. 2 are wounded but moving. Ammunition is low. Some men have fewer than 2 full clips. Grenades are counted one by one. You point toward the final howitzer and speak quietly, forcing calm into your voice. You explain the plan in seconds. Suppress, flank, assault. The German gun fires again. The concussion rolls through the ground and into your ribs. That shell is already on its way toward Utah Beach. You move. Rifle fire erupts from the hedgerow as your men open up, deliberately loud, deliberately aggressive. The Germans respond instantly. Tracers snap past your head. Bark explodes from the trees. You feel the wind of a bullet skim your helmet. You sprint. 20 yards, 15, 10. You dive into the gun pit as a grenade detonates behind you. The shockwave slams you into the dirt. Your ears ring. You roll, fire twice, and a German crewman drops at arm's length. The 4th gun falls silent at approximately 5:15 hours. For a moment, there is only breathing, heavy, ragged, disbelieving. Then you realize the truth. This battery was supposed to be neutralized by an entire battalion. You did it with 12 men, but the night is not finished with you. You search the area and find maps, detailed firing charts marking Utah Beach, landing lanes, and troop concentrations. Had these guns survived another hour, the casualty count on the sand would have been catastrophic. Hundreds dead before breakfast. You order the maps taken. Intelligence matters now as much as bullets. As first light creeps into the sky, the German counterattack finally comes. Small arms fire snaps from the tree line. Mortar rounds begin to fall, short at first, then closer. You reposition your men, pulling back in disciplined bounds, refusing to let the enemy fix you in place. You are no longer attacking, you are surviving. And survival at this moment is victory. By 6:30 hours each hour, the battery is silent. The guns that were supposed to tear landing craft apart never fire again. Out at sea, the first waves hit Utah Beach. They encounter resistance, but not annihilation. What they do not know, what they will not know for years, is how close they came to disaster. As the sun rises fully, you begin to move again. You are still scattered, still isolated, still technically lost, but the rule has already broken, because scattered men are not defeated men. Throughout Normandy, the same pattern repeats. Small groups of paratroopers, 5 here, 8 there, attack road junctions, cut telephone lines, ambush convoys, and create the illusion of a force far larger than it is. German commanders receive reports that make no sense, attacks from every direction, no clear front. No massed units to counterattack. They hesitate, they delay, they wait for clarity that never comes. By mid-morning, that hesitation has consequences. Armored units remain locked in place, awaiting orders that cannot be verified. Reserves move too late. Counterattacks lose cohesion before they even begin. Chaos, the very thing Airborne Doctrine warned against, now works in the Allies' favor. If you find this kind of forgotten history as fascinating as we do, we'd be honored if you'd hit that subscribe button. We believe these stories of courage and sacrifice deserve to be told. And by subscribing, you help us ensure they aren't forgotten. What you cannot see from your position inland is the broader effect already unfolding. Utah Beach, initially landed on a mile south of its intended location, benefits from the very confusion that nearly doomed it. German defenses are thinner. Artillery support is absent. Casualties number in the dozens instead of the thousands planners feared. What they didn't know was that a handful of airborne actions, uncoordinated on paper, decisive in reality, had severed the defensive spine behind the beach. German 7th Army headquarters struggles to form a clear picture, reports conflict. Enemy strength is overestimated by as much as 3-1. Requests for panzer deployment stall in the chain of command, trapped between uncertainty and fear of committing too early. By the time clarity arrives, the moment has passed. Allied forces link up inland within 48 hours. Supply lines stabilize. Beachheads expand. What was nearly a collapse becomes a lodgment. What was supposed to fail quietly becomes irreversible. Historians will later calculate that airborne disruption delayed German counterattacks by critical hours, hours that saved entire divisions on the beaches. The true impact would not be understood until after the war, when captured documents and survivor accounts finally align. D-Day did not succeed because everything went right. It succeeded because enough went right at exactly the wrong time. For you, Lieutenant Richard Winters, the day does not end with triumph. It ends with exhaustion. With more orders, with more fighting still to come, you survive Normandy. You fight through France, Holland, and into Germany itself. You rise to command easy company. You lead men through Bastogne and beyond. Many of the men who jumped with you that night do not survive the war. They were 20, 21, 22 years old. From farms, factories, and small towns that never expected to shape history. To this day, the battery you silenced still stands in Normandy, preserved as a reminder of how close the invasion came to unraveling. And that is why this story matters now. Because history often remembers plans, but it is saved by people. When the war finally ends, you go home quietly. There is no parade waiting in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. No band. No banners. You return to civilian life the same way you entered the war, without spectacle. You work. You raise a family. You carry memories you rarely speak about. For decades, the public story of D-Day focuses on the beaches. Omaha's bloodshed, the heroism under direct fire, the iconic images of men wading through surf with rifles held high. What almost no one talks about is how close the invasion came to failing before the first landing craft touched sand. The weather nearly forced a delay that might have exposed the plan entirely. The airborne drops scattered so badly that senior commanders feared entire regiments had been destroyed before dawn. At one point in the early morning hours, Allied staff officers genuinely questioned whether to abort follow on landings. Think about that. The largest amphibious invasion in history, balanced on a knife edge, while isolated groups of paratroopers fought alone in the dark, unaware of how much depended on them. You never knew how many lives were saved because those guns at Brécourt Manor never fired again. No one could calculate it then. Historians would try later, tracing casualty projections, artillery arcs, and landing schedules. The numbers vary, but the conclusion does not. Hundreds, possibly thousands, of men lived because a small, scattered unit acted without orders and without hesitation. Many of the men who followed you that morning never lived to see the legacy they helped secure. Private Joe Liebgott, Sergeant William Wild Bill Guaner, men barely out of their teens carrying more weight than any generation should have to bear. They were not thinking about history. They were thinking about survival, about the man next to them, about doing the job in front of them because there was no one else left to do it. Lieutenant Richard Winters lived until 2011. When asked about leadership, he never spoke about glory. He spoke about responsibility, about earning trust, about making decisions when no one else can. And that is the quiet truth of D-Day. It did not succeed because the plan was perfect. It succeeded because when the plan broke, the men did not. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. Every click tells the algorithm this piece of history is worth remembering. We're dedicated to rescuing these forgotten stories from the archives. If you want to join us on this mission, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment with your city or state and tell us if someone in your family served. Thank you for ensuring that Richard Winters and the 12 men who silenced the guns overlooking Utah Beach do not disappear into silence. They deserve to be remembered. The fighting does not end with the sunrise. It only changes shape. As morning hardens into daylight, you begin to link up with other scattered paratroopers. Men emerge from hedgerows and ditches, mud-streaked and hollow-eyed, asking the same questions you are asking them. Where are we? Who's in charge? What's the mission now? You give them one. Roadblocks are established. German patrols are ambushed. Telephone lines are cut and cut again. Every small action compounds the confusion already gripping the enemy. German officers try to impose order, but their reports describe an airborne force everywhere and nowhere at once. Think about what that implies. An invasion that nearly failed because of disorder now survives because of it. By midday, contact is finally made with advancing ground forces from Utah Beach. The link-up is not dramatic. No speeches, no flags, just exhausted men nodding at one another, realizing they are no longer alone. Only later do the full implications begin to surface. Captured German officers confirm that artillery fire plans were rendered useless by the loss of inland batteries. Delayed counterattacks allow American forces to push beyond their initial objectives. Beachheads expand instead of contracting. Momentum builds. The moment the Allies feared, when the invasion would stall and be thrown back into the sea, never comes. And here is the most sobering truth of all. If the airborne phase had failed completely, if scattered men had frozen, waited, or withdrawn, the beaches would have become killing zones. Reinforcements would have been delayed. The timetable would have collapsed. Political pressure might have forced a withdrawal that could not be repeated for months, perhaps years. History often presents D-Day as inevitable. It was not. It balanced on men who never knew how close they came to disaster. Men who acted because someone had to. Men who refused to let confusion become defeat. That is the moment the Allies realized D-Day nearly failed before it began, and the moment it did not. Because when the plan broke, courage filled the gap. And that made all the difference.